Yeah. Been 100 days since I shaved, 2 days since I slept, 2 weeks since I bathed. Saw the orcs kill 2 slaves. My friend was depressed, all obsessed. He drowned himself in ale, no one saved him. It was too late, all he had was hate. In the end we was late. We gave up joy, cause war is hate. All I have is hate.
So modern audiences potentially really can't handle serious fantasy anymore. And they can't really handle serious fantasy anymore because most of the mainstream audience can't really handle talking about racism and really talking about it in a way that's sort of like constructive. They're just not really open for it. They seem like they're only open to really kind of exist in maybe a world where there is no differences between different ethnicities or different, quote-unquote racial groups or species. But the problem is that in reality there are differences. In reality there are systems that limit people's growth from country to country. There are different variations. You will, for example, in the real world find that you will go to Japan and there will be some restaurants where they don't really want you there, and they may easily say so on the writing, and you may feel offended by that. So instead of like waiting for somebody to really kind of like create some real fantasy, it was kind of interesting. I just started to write my own like 6 years ago because I don't know specifically what made it happen, but it just kind of like, maybe with everything going on with Corona, and even like I was noticing that stuff for 2019, and this video is not about that, but I just started writing stuff. And for really good fantasy, it's not that you have to have racial hatred, but it's just something usually, and we can just take, one of the masters, if not the master, Tolkien. There is racial hatred in his work. Now, you may argue, well, there shouldn't be any racial hatred and we got to get rid of it and it shouldn't exist and so forth and so on. I don't know if that's the really like the right frame of mind. And then in my experience, that's not necessarily how it works in the quote-unquote real world. Maybe it should, but that's not necessarily how it works. What you'll find is that you'll have people that'll say they're not racist, but they fetish. You'll say people that they'll say they're not quote-unquote xenophobic, yet they are. And all of these things, these might invariably see one person that may go in and out of these feelings or experiences. This video is not about the real world, so I'm not really going to talk about the real world too much, except in the context of, for example, referencing like the dwarves versus the elves in Tolkien or other books, or just, for example, like in one of the at this point it's like a trilogy that I've been working on off and on for about 6 years. I have different racial groups where there's deep hatred, and really in this case it's quote unquote for good reason. There's always supposedly like a good reason for like racism, imperialism, colonialism, and I'm talking about my book, but or even like hating the fact that these people dominated you, it's even like better in fantasy where the differences for an outsider might seem slight. then it's really sort of like, in some ways, maybe akin to what people, if they were looking outside of World War II at some of the behavior of the Allies versus the Axis, or rather the Axis versus the Allies, or the Axis versus the people they were dominating, you might say, for example, looking at the Japanese, like, what would make you think that killing all these people was okay? How did that happen? So when we look at, for example, like the orcs, just taking a Tolkien example, when we look at their behavior of massacring and killing people, in their minds there's no problem because they don't see their opponents really as on their level.
Yeah. Yeah. 수염을 깎지 않은 지 100일이 지났어. 잠들지 못한 지도 이틀째. 몸을 씻지 않은 지도 2주가 흘렀어. 오크들이 노예 둘을 죽이는 걸 봤어. 내 친구는 우울에 잠겨 있었지. 모두가 집착에 사로잡혔어. 그는 술 속에 몸을 던졌어. 아무도 그를 구하지 못했지. 이미 너무 늦어버렸어. yeah. 그에게 남은 건 증오뿐. 결국 우린 늦어버렸어. 전쟁은 증오이기에 우린 기쁨마저 포기했어. 내게 남은 건 증오뿐이야.